All right, well, the last thing we need to do now is figure out how to get the electrical from the door into the car here. And I went ahead and just disconnected all the wires from the switch and finished putting the door together just to make sure everything was out of our way. And now we can go ahead and start drilling some holes. This took a little bit of head scratching to figure out. What I've decided on is I went ahead and purchased a kit from Speedway Motors that includes a piece of flexible conduit here. It's just stainless braided hose. It's Teflon lined. And then it has a slider for the hose to run in and out of. What I've determined here to be the best course of action with this set is to mount the slider in the door, so the cable is going to slide in and out of the door, and then mount this end solid in the door jamb. So the way this is supposed to work is you take this, drill a hole in the door, slide this bushing through, and then it has a collar that you slide up, pinch this tight, tighten the set screw, and that's supposed to hold it in place. I'm not too crazy about that setup because there's no guarantee you're actually going to be able to get this nice and tight. But then it also isn't going to work in this car, because if I put it here in the door, I won't have any way of getting to the set screw easily. But since we're putting it in the door jamb, it's even worse, because behind this A-pillar here is another wall. So there's actually a space between here and then where the hinge mounts. And there's no way for me to get a wrench in there to tighten up on this collar. So what I've decided to do is to ditch this sleeve altogether. And then I made a prototype and tested it on the other door, and I just made a flanged adapter here that's going to work the same as this adapter, right? So this will screw under the door with a couple of sheet metal screws, and this one will now do the same. I also made it a little bit shorter than this original sleeve because again I have that double wall that I'm worried about. And now I can just drill my 3/4 inch hole in here. This will slide in place, a couple of screws, and we're done. Now this one here, this prototype, I just made this out of just some plastic that I had laying around just to make sure it's going to work. What we're actually going to use, I went ahead and made up some aluminum ones on the lathe. Matches the other one real nice. And so now we can go ahead and start drilling some holes in the door and in the door jamb here and get this stuff mounted up. And then I'm also going to show you some of the other issues that I ran into while working on the passenger side. So let's just get started here. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to mark the position in the door itself for where we need to drill our hole. And to do that, I'm just simply going to figure out where this is going to be placed within the door. I want it to be as far out as possible, close to this edge. So I just simply measured across the width of this piece, cut that dimension in half, measured off of the door frame that measurement, made my mark, drilled a pilot hole there. Now, I do have to worry about when the window is down, the bottom of the window sits right about here, basically level with this little body plug. So I need to make sure this stays low enough that it doesn't run into the window glass. And so I'm going to just put this down about 1 inch so it'll be below the level of the glass, and then again mark it so it's flush with that. And so I'm just going to go ahead and slap a piece of masking tape on the door right here. Then I can measure things up, center punch it, drill it out. All right, so here's what we got. I got my tape on here. I used my caliper to scribe a line going up and down for the distance I wanted in, and then I just eyeballed how low I wanted it to be, put a dot there. Now we can go ahead and drill our hole. So I'm just going to take my center punch here and go ahead and punch that out. All right, so with the tape removed here, now we got to figure out how to get this hole transferred over to the hinge pillar. And quite simply what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take another piece of masking tape here. We'll go ahead and lay that in the approximate location of where the hole is going to be drilled. I'm just going to add a second one here just to make sure I've got it covered. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply close the door, and I'm going to take a scribing tool of some sort, run that in here, and then I'm just going to mark the location on the tape. Then I can open the door, center punch, get my pilot hole drilled here. So let's go ahead and get that done. Alright, so with my door closed here, I'm just going to reach in, find the hole, and now I can just kind of dig around here. And now when I open this up, I've got a mark right here on my tape that shows the location of this hole. So now we can go ahead and center punch this right in that location. And now I can drill that out. Go ahead and remove my tape. So there we have it. We've got the holes drilled. These are just pilot holes, making sure things were lined up. And now we can go ahead and open them up to the full size to fit both of our components here. So we'll start with the one in the door here, and measuring this diameter here comes out to 1 1/8, which is a pretty good size hole. And so to do that, I'm going to be using one of these step drill bits. And there we have it. So now that guy fits in there perfectly. Now you'll notice it overlaps the door seal here just a little bit, but once that's installed, it'll look like a factory fit here. So that one's good to go. Now we got to get going on the door jamb here. Now for this insert, this is quite a bit smaller. This is only 3/4 of an inch. And so I'm going to switch to another step drill here. Alright, so here we go. We've got our holes all drilled here. The hole in the door was really no big deal. Just drill that out. We do have this a little bit close to the edge of the door, so I'm going to trim just a portion of this off so it doesn't protrude past this radius on the door. And the same thing happened on the other side, and I'm okay with that because I didn't want it to be too far into the seal here. And now if I shine a light, this isn't going to be the best, but you can actually see the second wall back here. So there's a space, an air gap in here, and so I had to drill that hole there. Now here's where things get really funny. Right back in here, you're not going to be able to see this, but running up and down this pillar is actually the defroster duct hose. And so this hole is, I've got it out as far this way as I can without running into issues in the door, but my cables are going to run right into my heater hose. What I've decided to do here is when we install the heater hose, we're just simply going to put a dent in it so the wires will pass through. Once this is all assembled, the wires are not going to be moving, so I'm not worried about any chafing or anything like that. We just have to make sure we have the clearance to go past the hose. So that was the biggest issue with this. Alright, so we've got our holes drilled here, and I'm going to pull this gasket back out of the way, and now what we need to do is go ahead and get the holes marked for the mounting screws. And so I'm just going to take make sure this is nice and straight up and down. I'm just going to take a Sharpie and Draw a couple circles there. And now I'll take my pillar piece here and same thing, make sure those holes are nice and straight up and down, and just outline that. And now we can just punch these right in the center of those circles. Water. Alright, so now at this point I can go ahead and get this guy set in place. We're not going to screw that in just yet. And I know that this one's all ready to go. But what we need to do now is we need to get our cable cut to length. And we need to get the cable installed on the sleeve, and that was a bit of a chore. So let's hop over to a bench here, and I'll show you how I managed to pull that off. All right, so here's what we got. So this is our original sleeve, our original loom that's going to provided by Speedway, and here's the one that I modified. I did shorten it up a little bit because it is not necessary for it to be this long. And so by shortening it up, it ensures that I don't have this end running into anything. And to do that, we're just going to use a cutoff wheel. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this sleeve, which they just have a little set screw holding that in place. So you remove that screw, and then this will just slide right out. We'll go ahead and line this up. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of masking tape and put that right in the area that I want to cut. And now we'll just take our Sharpie here and mark the length right about there. This doesn't have to be precise. And now we can just cut this off. Now the best way to cut these braided lines is to just use a cutoff disc, an abrasive cutoff disc. So I'm just going to simply hang that off the edge of the bench here. And there it is. So now that's cut to length. Now here's one of the issues that I had with this. Once I pull this out, you'll see at the end of the tube starts to flare here. You'll notice that I put a big recess, big taper in the beginning of this hole. That is to help with guiding this in place. But even with that, the sleeve really opens up here. So what I've done is I've just taken a hose clamp here. Now I tried a standard hose clamp and it wasn't the greatest, and so this one's actually for fuel injection type hose. And I'm just going to slide that over the end of my sleeve here. We'll tighten this up. So with my clamp in place, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push the sleeving back just a little bit, like so. And then I'm going to cut this tube a little bit shorter here. So we'll bring that back about 1/2 inch. We'll get rid of that Teflon. And now when I slide my clamp over, there we go. So now the sleeving actually overextends the Teflon a little bit. I'll snug this up. It'll kind of crush that stainless steel a little bit. And now I can use this clamp to guide the stainless into the aluminum housing here. And with a little bit of twisting and prayer, we got it installed. So now I'm just going to loosen this clamp, slide this all the way through, and now when I pull this back, any of this excess I can trim off after the fact. So now I'll just remove my clamp. That should slide off the other end here. And now that's actually ready to install in the door. So let's hop back over to the car. All right, so now we can go ahead and get this test fit. So I found it easiest if I remove this from the door. We'll get this slid in place, and now that gives me just a little bit more wiggle room with this hose here, because it's a pretty tight bend. And now we'll just move this over. Give that a little nudge there, and now we'll go ahead and drive our screws in. All right, so there we have it. We've got our sleeve in place. I'm going to go ahead and put this door seal back on. And so now you can see with the door seal in place, it's got a nice, almost factory finish to it. And I think what we're going to do when we install it in the door here is I'm going to replace these sheet metal screws with just some standard machine screws. And all of this hardware is going to be stainless when we put this together for the last time. But for now, we've got this mounted, and all we got to do is run a quick check here and make sure everything's functioning, and then we can come in and do our last little bit of finishing. You'll notice when I close the door that this is going to stick out beyond the door. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to trim this off. We're going to make this an oval shape to match this one. But I want to have this installed in the car so I can mark it, so I know exactly how short to make it. So let's go ahead and close the door now and make sure this is going to function the way it's supposed to. So you can see how the cable slides in right inside the door here. And then if I pull this all the way back, nice and solid. Again, you can see a little bit of the material sticking out here. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to mark that. I'm just going to scribe a line. And that'll tell me how narrow I need to make that. So we'll open that up. And there we have it. So final step, we'll go ahead and pull this back apart, and we'll narrow this up, and we should be good to go. All right, so to mark these radiuses here, I found that I just have my 36 millimeter axle nut socket is the correct size. So if you're working on one of these Volkswagens, you probably have one of these sockets. So I can just lay that on there, get everything kind of centered up, and now I can scribe a line. We'll do this on the other side as well. And so now I've got some nice radius to edges here. So what we'll do next is I'm just going to go ahead and rough cut this with my cutoff wheel, and then I'll take a file and smooth that out. And then this one here is so little material that I can just take a file, and what we'll do is we're just going to straighten that guy out just like that. So we'll hop over to the vise here, and we'll take care of that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this finished off. I'm going to clean up this face one more time, and then we should be able to install this back in the car. All right, so we got this all wrapped up here, and went ahead and just sanded the edges smooth, got the shape nice and even, and just polished the face up again. And really all that's left with this now is to actually secure the tube into this housing. What I plan on doing is I'm going to mimic what Speedway did, and I'm going to drill and tap for a set screw just to mechanically hold it. And then before I put this together for the last time, what I'll do is I'll pull this back a little bit, run some epoxy in there. So then when I pull this back out, the epoxy will kind of fill in all these little strands, and then I can kind of file or grind this smooth so we don't have any sharp burrs that could catch on anything. But all in all, you know, again, took a little bit of work, but nothing difficult, just time involved. So I'm pretty happy with how things have turned out here. There it is, Volkswagen Beetle with power windows, power door locks, and a remote that's going to control both of them. So all in all, I'm pretty satisfied with how this turned out. We still have some fine tuning that needs to be done. We got to get the switch located correctly, but I can't do that without door panels. The lock rod still needs some fine tuning. We'll come back and we'll do that later, but for now we're going to call it. There's nothing else I can really do until I get the door stripped and the rust areas repaired and then get it painted. So once we get that done, then when we assemble it for the final time, we'll go through and make all the final minor adjustments. So that's all we've got for today. Make sure you come back next time around, because I don't actually know what we're going to be working on. It's whatever parts I have for the next project. And that's it. I'll see you around.